Hey everybody, today I'm planning to share my drawing process. You're going to see everything that I usually do when it comes to drawing for limited amount of time. So let's dive in. First thing that I'm going to do, I'm going to create a new canvas. I'm using Procreate and I am going to create a canvas with the screen size. I am going to use a color palette that I've already selected. That is the color palette I'm going to use, and I'm going to put the link to that color palette in the description below so you can download it for free and you can use it if you want to follow along. First thing that I'm going to do, I'm going to start with creating the sketch. I'm going to select a dark color, let's say that blue color, and I'm going to select my 6B pencil brush, which is under sketching category. This is my go-to brush when it comes to sketching, and I love to start with that brush and then later on to decide if I want to keep the outlines of the drawing or I want to remove it and I just want to use the sketch as a reference. So for today's illustration, I'm going to create a frog which lays in a pond or something like that. And my idea here is just to start by sketching all the elements on the illustration pretty loosely. The first sketch usually is something that I want to see how the things look and work into the composition, so I won't try to be precise, and later on I will refine the sketch. So at first I'm starting with creating the frog by just creating simple shapes. I really like putting the lips near the eyes of animals because that makes them pretty cute from the get-go. So that's a nice tip. If you want to make something cuter, always put the mouth closer to its eyes and it's going to automatically make it cuter. Of course, anytime I'm not quite sure what I'm doing, I can just take my selection tool and I can make some adjustments. I can move my hands slightly, something like that. I think it's okay that way. Since it's going to be in a pond, it's going to lay on something. So I'm going to create some leaves that my frog is going to lay on. Of course, I'm drawing on top of the frog, although the leaf is going to be below it, but I just want to make sure that I am going to have the accurate sort of shape. I'm going to try to add some more leaves in the pond, some bigger, some smaller. I'm trying to create a variety. And I can also add some water lilies, let's say. I thought, in ponds usually there are some water lilies and it's going to be a nice addition to the whole illustration, not just to add some leaves, but actually to add something like flower. And it's going to give some color variety here. I'm going to think about different colors because I currently have only greens and blues, so I'll have to definitely think of additional colors, maybe something like pink, but we'll see. So we have the initial sketch, which looks pretty loose, as you can tell. So now I'm going to create a new layer and I'm going to bring the opacity of the first initial sketch down to something like maybe 50% because I drew pretty loosely with my 6B pencil. So at 50% I can still see, but the drawing is not going to affect my redrawing on the second layer. So I think 50% is okay for me. And then on that new layer, I am going to start redrawing. And to be honest, not perfect drawing is way better than no drawing at all. So I would highly encourage everybody to create something rather than nothing. When something slightly needs to be improved, I can go to my magic wand and I can go to liquify and I can use my push. And I'm going to draw that size pretty low and I'm going to make some adjustments with a layer with my push tool. If you're not sure how to use those tools, you can check this video where I'm explaining how to do that with a bunch more drawing tips. The link is going to be in the right side of the screen. here in the description box below. And of course, if there is something that you think is not clear for you and I'm doing in my videos, please let me know in the comments and I can make additional videos depending on what you find useful and what you think it's important to know, but I didn't explain it in such details. Maybe the body of my frog is way bigger, so I'm going to make that part smaller. I would say in the sketch phase is the time when you can try and experiment like a lot. After that, if you try to make those changes when you've already had colors and everything is in place, it's gonna be way difficult. So use that time wisely and really think about those additional details. I would say at that point, I'm going to create a new layer. So I'm going to switch off the first layer entirely. I'm going to create a new layer and I'm going to reduce the opacity of the second layer to 40 or so %. And I want to recreate the frog itself because there are a lot of things that bothers me. And I really think that the frog itself, since it's the main object on the illustration, it's the main character, it needs to be okay. And then I'm going to continue with the rest because the rest is pretty straightforward and I don't think I'm going to have a lot of issues there. I just want to recreate my frog better. I think we are okay with our frog at this point. And then I'm going to turn on the opacity of the first layer and remove the second layer, hide it basically. And from here on, I can continue with the rest of the elements that I had. And this time I am going to create my rest of the elements on a new layer that is going to be below my frog. Since my frog is going to be on top of everything, the rest is going to be below it. And I really want to separate these two even on that stage because I'm not quite sure if I'm going to use the outlines for my frog, for the leaves and everything, or I'm going to completely remove it. That's why I want to start with that change here. And now what I'm going to do, I'm going to start with creating my leaves. If you want to create a perfect or nearly perfect circle without using quick shapes so it looks more organic, you need to use your elbow, not your wrist. Otherwise, you won't be able to do it. I have a video about how to draw these type of shapes that also is going to be in the video description below, so you can check it out. Sorry for my never-ending rotation of the canvas, but it's difficult for me to draw if I don't change the view of the canvas, so that's why I'm doing it. Okay, I think that's the whole drawing that I wanted to create initially, so I'm going to hide the first sketch and I'm going to use that as reference for my future coloring part. First thing that I'm going to do, I'm going to start with the background color and I'm going to select that light blue background because I want that to be the water and the water is going to be blue, and from here on I'm going to start with coloring the rest of the things on my illustration. So I'm going to create a new layer and I'm going to select that light color here and I'm going to use my studio pen, and with that I'm going to start with coloring my leaves. And we're going to see how the colors are going to work with the background. If there is something that needs to be adjusted, it is going to be adjusted. I'm going to use that color for some of my leaves. And then I'm going to select another green color. I'm going to go with that darker green color and I'm going to create a new layer for that because I don't want the different shades of green to be on the same layer. Then I'm going to create a new layer and I'm going to select that really dark green color and I'm going to use it for that part here. And as you can tell, I don't see the frog itself now, so maybe I will change just the outline of the frog. Currently, it's with greenish color. I can go to hue, saturation, brightness, and I can turn the brightness down 25% or 20%, and I'm going to keep it like that, and later on I'll decide what I'm going to do with that outline. So let's go with that green color and to finish what I wanted to do with it. And then I'm going to go to that color, and I can move the color wheel to the downside, and I can create a new layer for that new shade of green, and I can use it for that, for example. And then it comes the frog part. On top of all the coloring, I'm going to create a new layer, and I'm going to use that green color. And now I can just fill the colors like that. And then we can go back to our outline layer. We can go to hue, saturation, and brightness, and I can turn the brightness to 25% up where it was initially. From here, I'm going to create a new layer, and I'm going to fill my water lilies. And since I don't know what I'm going to use for my water lilies, so I'm going to go to my color wheel, and I'm going to try something pretty light. Okay, let's try that one. If I put it here, it looks pretty okay with the blue color. So let's see how it works in practice. Of course, I can try some additional changes later on, but for now, I think it works pretty well. So now I'm going to change the background slightly because that kind of a blue color is not good enough, I would say. And another pink color that's going to be lighter than that for the rest of my flower. So far so good. So now I see a few things that I need to change. The first thing is the size of that area here, because I think the frog is pretty small comparing to the rest of the elements in the illustration. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the layers that maybe contains most of those elements. And of course, once I do that, I'm going to select the selection tool, and I'm going to make some kind of a selection around the elements that I want to size, and then I'm going to take the transform tool, and I'm going to resize them, and of course I'm going to take into consideration the outline of the frog and the outline of those elements. So once I do that, I'm going to make that selection, and I'm going to make them a bit bigger. Of course, that one here needs to be done previously, because now maybe I've lost some of the quality of my sketch. But anyways, I'm going to add some shadows and highlights. I'm going to go to the top of my coloring layers, and I'm going to create a new layer, and I'm going to change its blend mode to multiply. By changing the blend mode to multiply and selecting just regular gray color, I'm going to add shadows. That way I won't need to select colors for my shadows everywhere I'm drawing. So what I'm going to use, maybe I'm going to use the 6B pencil, because I like that pencil and it works well for adding shadows. And as you can tell, it's pretty harsh. So of course I'm going to reduce the opacity of that layer to 50%. I'm putting shadows here on both sides of the frog because it's laying down, so its body is going to cast shadows everywhere on the leaves, no matter the light. So also the leaves themselves are going to cast shadow to one another because they're overlapping. So I'm taking into consideration all of those shadows. Of course, I'm not trying to be perfect and correct by any means. It's just a way to represent those colors. And of course, I am thinking about removing the outline of everything except of the frog itself. So what I can do is I can go to my layers and just hide the outlines of those leaves. And later on, I'll see if I need some highlights somewhere or I need some other adjustments. So for now, I'm going to remove them, and I'm going to continue adding the shadows. Of course, I'm trying not to go overboard with the shadows. Somehow I decided that the light is coming from the right side. That's why my shadows are on the left side. I didn't mention it, but this is what I've decided, maybe subconsciously. Okay, and then I'm going to do the same but for the highlights, and I'm going to create a new layer. I'm going to change the blend mode to screen, and I'm going to keep my gray color, and this is where I'm going to add the highlights. It's going to work the same way, but in the other side, where gray color is going to work as lightening, as you can tell, and I'm going to add that everywhere. And of course, I can drop the opacity down to 50%. The other thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new layer somewhere at the bottom, and I'm going to use the color of our background, and I'm going to go to inking in Studio Pen, and I'm going to draw some kind of a shape which is not going to be visible, but when we change the background to screen and we fill that zone, I'm going to have that color. And now I'm going to drop the opacity down to 40%. And I'm going to create another shape like that at the top part. And then I'm going to create a new layer. I'm going to change the blend mode to multiply, and I'm going to continue work with that color, and I'm going to create another shape like that here, and I'm going to fill that with color. I'm going to do another shape here. I think I need to make more emphasis on that part of the drawing. So I'm going to create a new layer. I'm going to select black color, pure black, and I'm going to go to my airbrushing and soft brush, and I am going to make something like that. I'm going to turn the opacity down to maybe 15. If you feel like it, you can continue or you can leave it as it is, but I think that we already have something that looks pretty good. I hope that was useful for you, and seeing my process is giving you some kind of a clarity for your own drawing process. So if you have some questions or something that you need to know more in depth about, just let me know in the comments, and I'll be more than happy to answer and maybe to even record a video about it. And if you find this video helpful, be sure to subscribe for my channel. I'm posting on weekly basis a lot of drawing tips, ideas, resources, and everything that's going to help busy people to find more time to draw. So thank you very much for spending the time with me, and I'm going to see you in the next video. Bye!